in the last week, I've had 3 people challenge the idea that food addiction is a thing or that it should be taken seriously at all. So the first person was like, yeah, you really like food? Uh-huh. Okay. Yeah. So I used to shoot up fentanyl and meth. Tell me how we're related. The other person is somebody who is struggling with her weight. She's almost 400 pounds. And she's like, you're talking about this experience of being addicted to food, and I can't relate because my story doesn't look like yours. So I can't relate. So I'm sure you're probably sharing some things that would be helpful, but I'm not an addict. So maybe not. The other person sat across from me at dinner and was telling me about his father who has diabetes and who's dying from this disease and will likely die from complications with this disease, and was talking so disparagingly about his father because, like, how can you just not figure it out? Just don't eat the food. Don't put it in your face. I will also point out that this person who was talking about his father is also somebody who's struggling with his weight and has struggled with his weight his whole life. And so for him, he's like, I mean, I get it. I mean, I know why I'm this size. I know why I'm overweight. And, but my dad is going to freaking kill himself with this diabetes. And so, he kind of put himself against his dad in that way as if they were different. And so in each of these cases, like, all these people took a step back and they're like, I can't relate to you. Like, your story is not my story. I definitely don't relate to you. And maybe you were even a little offended that I would suggest, like, like, food addiction is a thing. Like, it's not as easy as calories in, calories out. And so I have to tell you, and there's other videos I've made about my story. You can find those. But food addiction, here's my question. Is it going to kill you? If we're looking at things and behaviors of whether or not it's an addiction or not an addiction, like, maybe this word addiction, maybe this word is broadly used, or maybe it's too narrowly used. When we hear the word addict, when we hear the word addiction, like, how quickly are we thinking about somebody who's struggling with alcohol or narcotics? And traditionally, those are the kind of the communities that we see represented in movies, in literature, in our understanding. I mean, Alcoholics Anonymous, that's where the 12 steps, they originated in the first place. So we see this idea and this mentality applied to things that are really serious, like with alcohol and drugs and stuff. And I say really serious. I think any addiction is serious. I mean, mine was to eating. I was literally eating myself to death. I was over 300 pounds. I was going to die. I was killing myself. And there are other people who are struggling with gambling and they're losing everything financially. There are people who are struggling with pornography and they are watching their families be ripped apart. There are people who are struggling with any number of things. And when we hear the word addiction, we're like, oh, that doesn't apply to us because, but there are people who are silently just, their lives are being destroyed. And so for me, I think here's the question. Is it going to kill you? Is it going to kill you physically? Is it killing you spiritually? Is it killing relationships? Is it killing job opportunities? Like, is it something that's moving through your life in a really destructive way and you look at it as something that you do not want to be doing, but you're doing anyway? You know the cost. You have made promises. You have tried. You have failed. You have tried. You have failed. You know the problem more intimately than anybody else in your life who's pointing at it and saying, that's a problem, you better stop or else. Yeah, we know. We get it. If it's something that is destroying you in some way and you can't stop, and it is destructive and it is hurting you and it is costing you things that are dear and you can't stop, okay, maybe we need to come up with a new word. Maybe we need to stop saying you have an addiction, because people freak out over the word addiction. They get really possessive of it. And people also have a lot of things to say to people who are struggling with any of those behaviors in the first place. Meaning, for me, coming from the place of food and eating addiction, what you eat. It's calories in, calories out. That's a simple math problem. Figure it out. Like, just don't buy the donuts. Like, how can you sit there at the table when you have diabetes and eat the very things that you know are going to kill you? Just don't eat it. Sure. Okay, don't eat it. All right. So say that to somebody who can't stop drinking. Well, you know what? People do. Just don't go to the liquor store. Just don't get the bottle. They say that to people who have narcotics. Just don't take the pills. How easy is that? What are you doing? I get it. Just don't buy the cigarettes. Just don't turn on the computer. Yep. We know. If only we just couldn't do that thing. Every single person you're pointing at and saying, just don't do that thing, I promise you, they've tried to not do that thing. Nobody is eating like this because they want to die. Nobody goes into the doctor's office skipping and they can't wait to sit across from their doctor and look him in the eye as he says, you know, you have these other 5 health issues and they're all because of the way you're eating, right? Like, can you just lose a little bit of weight here? Nobody wants to go in and have that conversation with their doctor. We're tired of having that conversation with their doctor. The last time I went in, it was when I was pre-diabetic and they wanted to start me on medication. And I was like, oh, give me a minute. I think I can lose some weight. Like, give me a minute. So they're like, we'll give you a couple months. So I went in 2 months later. I was a little bit heavier. And they're like, yeah, we definitely need to start you on some medication. I didn't want to be diabetic, so I didn't want to go back. I didn't go home and start eating better, but I did go home and say, I'm not going back to that doctor. I don't want to be on medicine. I don't want to be diabetic. And so I'm just telling you, like, nobody is doing this because food's that good. Nobody does it because alcohol is that delicious. Nobody does it because tobacco is that satisfying. Like, when you first move into a place of addiction, what I mean is like that for me, like food, I knew it was killing me. I knew it was destroying my body. I knew I was breaking promises to myself, to my family, to God. I knew all of those things. It didn't keep me from sitting on the couch and enjoying that first bite and loving it and feeling the silkiness or the crunchiness or the sweetness or whatever it was and reveling in that moment. And then that moment leading to exhausting myself in a binge and waking up the next day and feeling sick and hating myself and all of these other things that came as a result. Like anything that's happening in anybody's life, that if it could fall into this area, like I said, if there's anything that you're doing that like you don't mean to do it and you don't want to do it, but you're going to do it anyway, nobody loves that experience of having done it. It's horrible. And people hit rock bottom all the time, and then what? They don't change. And some people have the victory stories of like, I hit rock bottom and then I changed. I'm talking to someone right now who is having that experience. It's like, I've hit rock bottom. I've seen somebody who's dying of diseases caused by obesity, and I've had my white light moment. I'm a changed person. I've been changed for 3 weeks. Hopefully it lasts. I've had those moments. Like, people hit rock bottom over and over and over and over again. And all that does is create enough of fear to make you try again. Enough fear to put your addiction to the side for a few minutes and try, like, to redouble your efforts to really, really, really try harder. I've had family members who have died from complications of diabetes. I have had rock bottom moments. When I first hit 200 pounds, that was a pretty intense rock bottom moment for me. Growing out of your wardrobe every few months is not fun. When I first started gaining weight, when I was first starting gaining weight, I went from 119 pounds, probably a little underweight at that point, but I went from 119 pounds up to 130, 135, 140. People thought I was pregnant. Growing out of your whole wardrobe is not comfortable. Like, there were all of these moments that I thought were rock bottom moments. And every time I hit them, there's a little part of me that was like, okay, good, rock bottom. That means I'll be scared enough to try. Or rock bottom, like, I don't ever want to be here. And what I found, though, is that it didn't matter how many times I ever hit rock bottom. They looked different at different times, but none of them were powerful enough to keep me away from the thing that I knew was going to help me feel better. Because I have to tell you, it's not about the food. Whatever the addiction is, it's not about that thing. It isn't. There's probably nothing that is so good we are willing to kill ourselves over it, or to destroy a relationship or a marriage or a family or a covenant that we've made with God. Like, there is nothing that is that attractive that we are willing to give it up, and that we're willing to give up everything else in our life. Those moments that we move into our addiction, they're not made while we're sitting in the couch moving through rational thinking. They're made in moments of pain when we are in irrational thinking, that we're just in a place where we just have to feel better, and we found something that's going to make us feel better, and nothing is more important than feeling better in that moment. When I'm super emotionally triggered, I am not thinking about the next time I'm going to have to go in and sit with my doctor and have that conversation. I'm not thinking about the promises I made to anybody. I just know I have to feel better, and I know a thing that's going to do it. Is it killing you? If it's killing you, then maybe consider, maybe I can benefit from applying some addiction recovery principles here. Maybe that will help me. Is it killing you? If so, maybe reframe how you're looking at it so you can apply some solutions that will work. And if it's killing somebody else, please understand they're not in a place where they want to do that. They don't. They're not doing it on purpose. So give them a little bit of slack. If you enjoyed this, if you want to hear more about my story, please sign up for my newsletter. I send a new one out every week where I talk about